I've noticed that a lot of blocks get neglected in this game, so I'm going to take some blocks that don't normally see a bunch of use in building and show you some tricks that you can do with them specifically for ceilings. Before we get into this, I just want to say that I've received a ton of support and I really, really appreciate that from you guys. But this is probably my least supported channel, so if you guys want to just go over there and then, click buttons, do all that shit that people tell you to do, you don't have to, but it would really help me out. I mean, look at this. That number's pathetic compared to the other ones at the very least. Alright, sorry, interrupted the video to say that. Bye! One of the first blocks that we're going to be looking at is actually the lectern, which is right at home in the library. And as you can see, you'll notice something a little weird about the ceiling. Most of the time when you deal with oak planks, you only have one direction you can go, but by using lecterns, you can instead have rotated oak plank ceilings. At least based on, that's what the texture looks like. You can also have these very, very nice little lines. As you see here, we can get this nice little light line. You can also get this nice dark line, depending on how you rotate the lecterns that are on top of here. As you can see, if I grab this, I get a nice little lectern, I can place it down, and our library feels a little bit more like a library, given how this block works. Next up is this little thatched roof style thing, where you're allowed to get a lot of different cool little patterns, similar to the previous build where we looked at a lectern. This one uses bee nests as well as beds to get this very interesting effect where the roof looks very messy and cramped. It sort of seems a little weird. As you can see, I can get the beehive, I can get the bed, all for a very nice effect with the roof, where it seems a little bit more chaotic while also still being the same general color palette. Another very useful trick about this is that you can actually use it for a secret entrance. If no one notices that these are beds during the nighttime, you can go right into another room where we have a lot more roofing styles to go over. For instance, you might notice how this sort of resembles these spruce planks. However, you can see that it's not exactly the same. It's more lined and gridded off, because these are barrels. You can have a lot of storage in your ceiling if you use this trick, but most importantly, it has this very nice visual effect. We also have this. I'm sure you've all seen the campfire in use for ceilings before. It's very, very good, especially because of the fact that it gives off noise, so you can create a bit of an ambiance with it. But a lodestone is also a really nice ceiling block, as you can see. Has very interesting grid pattern that reminded me of sort of a metal or stone working room, so I built this to match it, and I think it looks very nice, even despite the fact that it is a little bit odd for Minecraft standards. We also have this, the daylight sensor, or daylight detector, depending on the version of game you're using. Either way, it has this nice, almost chocolate bar-y texture to it, and the best part is, if you use it correctly, you can have it so that it's like an ingrained light switch into your, into the actual ceiling. So that's a very nice effect you can get there. No additional redstone needed, and it does look a little bit sinister, so I decided to put it in this wither skeleton room. Now, next is a block that is technically not a ceiling block, but I wish it was. This is the closest I can replicate it in the game using shulkers, beehives or bee nests, and stripped oak and stripped birch logs. Those are all the things that you can use to mimic it. But the bottom of a cactus has this very interesting texture. However, as you probably know, whenever you try to place a cactus as a ceiling block, it just doesn't work. And if you break the block that it's standing on, you'll also see that it just pops off and doesn't do anything. So you can't really use this as a ceiling block, but I thought it was interesting to point out that the underside of a cactus has a very interesting texture. Speaking of shulkers, I found that they're very nice for making cartoony environments like this elevator that's a little bit too big, a little bit too fancy and all that. It sort of adds to the cartoony effect, although you will see these weird white lines appear sometimes. It's a pretty glitchy block when used as a ceiling, but it's something to consider. Stepping out of the elevator, we go into this large room where we have a grindstone ceiling. It's very, very similar to this stone slab ceiling. This smooth stone slab ceiling, sorry. Except for the colors are a bit darker, the lines are a bit more pronounced, and it just has a much more corporate look to it, so I built this large office space with a mountain of cocaine. Next up is the loom. The underside is also a fairly cartoony looking block at times. but I found that it kind of works for a lot of different build types. See here that I have a little garden, and fits right at home here, as well as in a closet environment. Just a very nice ceiling block that you should consider. Another kind of odd one is the smithing table. It has this very nice interconnected texture that looks almost velvety. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with this. I'm sure you guys could come up with something way better, but I made this little potion room with water and lava, and, you know, it has a nice little vibe to it, and I think the smithing table really helps tie it together. Interestingly enough, another one of the villager blocks, the composter's underside, is another sort of wooden texture that you don't really get in the game, and you can have these nice little grid patterns. I decided to make a little dojo for it, and it's very nice looking. Sadly, you cannot rotate it, but it's still a very nice block to use. Yet another villager block, the cauldron, is very nice for lighting fixtures. As you can see here, it has this nice little pattern with it, and fits right in with the sea lanterns. I've also thrown in the furnace here due to its interesting cobblestone with an outline texture to it. And it results in this very, very nice little room here, where you have those cauldrons up top that help be part of the lighting. Another trick with lighting, the bee nests that we mentioned before, as well as all the other blocks that were sort of similar to the cactus, can be used for hanging up chandeliers. The fence gate goes right into that little square area. It's just, you're allowed to make these nice little designs. Obviously, this is a fairly cheap chandelier. No, nothing too fancy, but it still looks very, very nice, according to me. For such a short video, this took a lot of building, and there was that one room that I didn't actually show because it ended up not being super great, but you will recognize it as a form of the safety bridge. Either way, if you really like this, you can feel free to, you know, do all that stuff that people ask you to do that I'm not going to say directly, but, you know, I'm going to implant it in your mind using words such as, magic word, please, subscribe. Abraca subscribe. Stay frosty.